Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here to tell you about Football Game. This is an adventure game released by Ratalaika Games, and I can't remember the name of the people, despite the fact I've literally got the video right in front of me. It's like Silver Dagger? Cloak and Dagger Games, that's it. This came out today. As I'm recording this, it'll probably be like a few more days before you actually see this video, and I apologize for that. But this is a very simple adventure game. It's about an hour long. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I usually don't jump into these sort of like Ratalaika ports anymore because, well, there's a couple of reasons really. One, they stopped sending me review code, and frankly, considering how much I've hated almost every one of their games that they've put out in one way or another, I have decided to actively just stop doing them now. And two, well, they just end up feeling like the same thing anyway, right? They feel like generic platformers or generic shooters or anything like that. Nothing particularly, like, interesting. This game, however, sort of kind of broke that mold because it got announced and it was not only an adventure game, which is something they don't do very often, but it has some decent looking atmosphere. The price was relatively cheap, although it's almost double what it is, I should say, on the Steam store right now, not even on discount. It's like $4 on the PlayStation store and $2 on the Steam store, which is, of course, annoying as hell, but that's just console tax for you. And yeah, as I said before, the game is only an hour long, so I actually don't mind this very much, in all honesty, because I've been going through a lot of really long games lately. I've been playing games like EU Senki, Uno, and, well, I'm probably going to get Death Stranding in a couple of days. So this is, it's not great for my video output rate. It's not great for actually getting shit finished. And, I'm also playing Final Fantasy XIV now, because that's a thing. So yeah, something that's nice and short actually appealed to me quite a bit. So I figure, you know what, why not? It's not that expensive. I've got the money on my PlayStation Network account. Let's just do that. And I recorded my entire playthrough, but I'm not going to let the entire game play through because I think they'd probably give me a lot of shit for that. That, and I'm still trying to figure out my video recording problems. This video recorded fine for like half an hour, and then it started dropping frames like crazy, and I'm still not sure why. But anyway, let's talk about the actual game. It's actually built in Adventure Game Studio, which amuses me to no end, considering how old that engine really is. I'm kind of surprised they haven't like released how they did it, so that more people could port their Adventure Game Studio games to Vita, but whatever, I'm not going to really talk about that. It's still kind of neat, actually, that it is in Adventure Game Studio, because I thought I recognized that font from somewhere. Turns out it's actually a very common font that used to be used in a lot of adventure games, and Adventure Game Studio was just really good at copying it, so sure. The gameplay itself is very simple. You walk around by pressing X on empty space, and you can interact with items by pressing X on them, and you can look at them by pressing circle, although I don't think you ever really need to do that, because if you're going to examine something and you're going to use something, but something that you can't really take, but you still examine anyway, X and circle do roughly the same thing, so I don't really see the point. You might as well just press the X button the whole time. You can only use the left analog stick to move the cursor. I don't think the touchscreen does anything, which is a little weird. But you can also use the right analog stick to use a lower sensitivity version of the, what's it called? A lower sensitivity version of the cursor, which I actually kind of appreciate because I think the default sensitivity on the regular left stick cursor is just a little bit too high. I'd appreciate the ability to turn it down a bit. It was nice to have the right analog stick as a lower sensitivity cursor, but they don't actually tell you this in the help menu, which is a little bizarre. It'd be nice if they did that. But yeah, you wander around, you pick up items, you can combine some items together. So, for example, you combine a cup of tea and a tea bag in order to, you know, actually make a cup of tea, right? Easy enough. So, it makes sense to me. And you just work your way through the game. There's a bunch of puzzles to solve. Most of them are pretty simple, and as I said before, the game is over in an hour. Like, I recorded my entire playthrough end to end, and it was almost an hour exactly. Like, almost kind of silly. All the Steam reviews say that it's about an hour, and they're pretty much right. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts around it. If you aren't, like, sick in the head for whatever reason, it will probably take you about an hour. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So, the entire story more or less does get wrapped up, I should say, by the end of it. But I will say that it takes a pretty decent amount of time for the game to actually get going. You don't really know much about the actual plot until about halfway through, and even then it's a little bit sketchy. It can be a little bit strange like that, because the game very slowly drip feeds you stuff about this guy's character and his relationship, although there really isn't that much there. The writing isn't very deep, and there is, like, some kind of things going on, but at the end of the game, I'm still a little bit confused about what happened. So, yeah, basically, here's the plot. You're a guy, you have a girlfriend, you want to go and see your girlfriend at the big football game. Simple enough, so you more or less have to work your way out of the house, and once you do, you have to go back in the house in order to find the gift that you had for her. Then you have to go back out and drive to the football game, and then you have to look for her again. And there is some plot stuff, there are some flashbacks that you have. There are a couple of things that are left unanswered, like, it's implied that something happened to this guy, although I'm pretty sure that now that I think about it, it's actually relevant to the twist at the end of the game. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I can't really get into it without spoiling the game, which is why I'm kind of holding off on it. So we'll hold off on that for a little bit and talk about everything else that the game has going for it. I guess we'll start with the atmosphere, and it is definitely trying to go for that sort of creepy, there's more going on here than you might think, although it's kind of misleading in that sense. Like, it definitely kind of feels like it's building up for something a little bit more substantial than what the final twist turns out to be, which I'm kind of disappointed by. I was hoping for something a little bit more horror-related. Now, I know there was something big coming up in the story, because what they say, what I read on one of the Steam reviews was basically that everything that the story is building up to happens after you open the locker, which is an interesting concept. However, my phone just went off because, holy crap, I can't go 5 minutes in a recording without my phone going off. But yes, the first 45 minutes, I just feel like build-up to something creepy happening, and I had it in my head the entire time. This is not the twist, by the way, it's not even close, but I had it in my head the entire time that when you opened up the locker, it turned out there was going to be like a dead body in there or something, and that maybe it was just this guy's, like, kind of insanity going against him. Like, something happened that drove him nuts, because they're implying that something big happened to this guy. It's why he quit the football team, and it's why the final twist happens, but it's anywhere near as, like, scary or anything like that as you might think. Especially when they seem to feel the need to, like, half jump scare you with the flashbacks. The flashbacks come up with, like, TV static, and it makes you think that it's going to try and jump scare you after a while, but no, that's just how the flashbacks start to happen. They could have been a little bit more subtle about it to give the game a little bit less of an eerie feel, but yeah. If the twist turned out to be something like his girlfriend was murdered or something and he still hasn't gotten over it, that would have been great. That would have been an awesome twist and I would have actually liked it. But no, that doesn't turn out to be what the twist is at all. That's a shame because, as I said, you've got this whole atmosphere going on with the static and the mood lighting and the weird faceless people walking around, despite the fact that you get these absolutely disgusting looking faces, like, animating. Like, this guy's head bobs up and down while he's talking, and it's bloody strange. But yeah, they've got this whole atmosphere going on, which makes the whole thing feel a lot creepier than it eventually turns out to be, which is almost disappointing in a way. That's going to be the best part of the game for me, which is the overall just design of it, because it made me think that something a lot darker was going to happen than eventually happened. There is also some sound design going on. there is a soundtrack, and considering how much of an effort they put into putting into the game to say, hey, the soundtrack is really cool, I didn't get it. It's kind of neat, I guess, but the thing is, when they make you hop into a car and start driving, they let you pick between 1 or 2 tapes, and depending on what tape you use, it changes the song you get, and then there's a third song at the end. Otherwise, the game is more or less just silence, and the only reason you'll be listening to the songs is because you're waiting in the car to get to the destination, but they give you a big prompt in the bottom right that says, press to skip. So, and I just thought to myself, well, if it's going to keep me waiting like this, I might as well skip. So I skipped. So the soundtrack doesn't really seem to come into it that much. Like, it would have been neat if there was, like, just something a little bit more idle in the background than just absolute silence. It feels so strange to put so much emphasis on this game's soundtrack, especially when in the credits they tell you that the soundtrack for this game is available on cassette tape. Because, okay, I guess it's meant to be a little bit of a sort of nostalgic flashback to the 80s, I think this game says its decade is in. To be fair, if, like, the only thing that's really missing from this game in particular is, like, modern smartphones and just, like, technology like that. It definitely could feel like 2001 or something like that, you know? There's no computers or anything, but honestly, this could be just, like, some what's the word I'm looking for? Like a poor neighborhood in this decade? It's just kind of strange. But yeah, it does take place in the 80s. It is meant to be sort of like nostalgia trip to that, but if it is, I don't see it. Like, there isn't really anything particularly amazing about this decade other than, like, you know, the aesthetics of all of it, which just feels a little bit off due to this weird art style they've got going on. I'm not really sure what they're going for with it, but yeah, the soundtrack is just weird in that sense. You get to sit around and listen to it if you like, but you're waiting to get to the next location of the game so that you can continue on with it. As I said before, the puzzles are very straightforward. You're never particularly out of information on what you need to do. It's all pretty obvious. The one puzzle that almost stumped me was at the very end, where you have to get a locker combination, and it was easy enough to figure out once I looked at everything for a decent amount. It's easy enough to figure out when you've looked at it for a decent amount of time, so it's easy enough. I got every trophy except one on my initial playthrough. I don't know exactly what I missed. Okay. And it's got a platinum too. I think it's like 9 golds and 6 silvers and a platinum for an hour's worth of work. So, you know, that's Ratalaika Games for you. God, I miss when trophies were actually worth something. What else is there to talk about? I mean, it's a fine enough port. I got no problems with the port. Like, this is Ratalaika Games we're talking about, remember? They have this amazing tendency to make even the most simplest games run terribly, so everything seems okay here. Although in this one weird scene where you... like, it's not even optional, but if you're just looking, like, through the channels on the television where you get to see, like, nuclear atom bomb tests, weird people who I am completely convinced they didn't pay the licensing for their likeness, just some weird repeating clips on the television. The clips play slowly the first time, and then when they eventually loop within a couple of seconds, they go through a fair bit faster. It's weird. It's really weird. I'm not entirely sure why that's a thing, but it's a thing. There's also a couple of other weird, like, moments like that, which make you think it's building up to something completely different. Like, there's this one segment in the latter half of the game where where the main character is staring at a cheerleader, and it just scrolls up this pixelated body of this cheerleader lady for 30 seconds while he's giving her the pervert stare and is playing this weird music that could easily fit in the intro of a porno. And then just hard cuts back to the game, and it made me laugh. There's just some stuff like that that stands out and make you think there's a little bit more to everything than there actually turns out to be. And I just can't help but think to myself, why? What? I don't understand. It's, It's not great. It's weird. It doesn't lead up to anything, that's the thing. So, we're 15 minutes in, so I think it's about time to talk about spoilers. So, you open the locker, get the photo, give it to the guy who tells you where your girlfriend's gonna be, and then you go into a room. You leave the room after talking to a guy, and it turns out that you have been in denial this entire time. Your girlfriend broke up with you because of something or other, and then, well, that's it. Like, that's legitimately it. Like, they throw in a little jewelry scene that implies that he's going to, like, marry her, but it then turns out to be just a weird necklace with an S on it. And he goes and confronts her about it, and then it feels like nothing. It feels like nothing. It's so strange. Just how they have this weird atmosphere, these weird things out of nowhere, and then they do imply all this stuff about how he had something horrible happen to him, and it made him leave his football team, but they seem to imply that it's his girlfriend breaking up with him in the first place that causes him to leave the football team, or that something else happened. I read all the text. I went through it pretty quickly, but at the same time I read all of it, I thought it was going to be something like a family member of his died, or, you know, something like that. Someone ended up dead. Like, again, the whole thing they have going on with, like, the fact that you're having trouble finding her, and it's going through all these flashbacks and stuff like that, and it's implied that a couple of people throughout the plot hate you for one reason or another. But it still feels weird to have it just be, oh, the girlfriend broke up with him and he can't get over it. It's just a weird plot twist considering everything that leads up to it. It feels like that... It feels weird to say it would be more natural if his girlfriend actually turned up dead and his insanity is just not letting him get over it. I was half right when I thought that it was going to be his girlfriend was dead, but no, it just turned out his girlfriend broke up with him. That doesn't even seem... It's just, yeah, it's weird. I still don't know what the reason is. Like, can I look this up? Is there like a plot summary of football game? No, there's not even a Wikipedia page on it. I can't say I'm surprised. Also, Steam led me to a completely different game. Like, for whatever reason, I searched football game plot on Google, and the first game it brought up was Football Story. I don't even know, but yeah, it just feels weird and disconnected, and it feels like it wasn't leading up to that ending. Did they change the ending at the very end of the game? Like, you know what, let me put the play speed up on the video that I'm watching right now so that I can... Oh, hang on, let me just find the, Yeah. This has gone too far. I'm just looking through my, recording of the game right now. Yeah, he gives her the gift. And he wanders on through. Yep, there's the dropped frames again, because goddamn it. Yeah, so he gave her the necklace, but then he cuts back to him in his room, being depressed, and the necklace is there on the ground in the gift box. I don't know, are they implying something here? Because I'm really not sure what's happening. I guess that's my biggest problem with the game then. The plot despite taking a full hour to build up such a boring twist, doesn't really feel connected to said twist, and just kind of jumps back and forth on what happened and why, leaving the whole thing to be annoyingly vague. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back playing it, making sure the recording's right, and then encoding this video. Not much else I can really say about it. It's just, yeah, it's not worth the time, honestly. Honestly, it would have been worth the time if his girlfriend turned up dead, but I guess that's just the way of things around here. This has been Blue Maxima. I've got more games to go through. I'm trying to get through Uno. I'm trying to get through enough EU Senki to get a video done, but EU Senki is just as long a game as any other bloody game I've had to do recently. And I'm going to have to buy Death Stranding at some point because it's Kojima. I've played almost every one of his games. I haven't played Arctic Adventure, but I think that's like the only game I haven't played that he's had a hand in yet. Oh, also Castlevania Lords of Shadow, but also that game turned out kind of garbage, so whatever, I'll figure it out. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.